Have you ever tried to build a table from IKEA using the littlest amount of parts possible? Mainly just because you want to take the spare parts and throw them at your next door neighbors. Well, welcome to Neighborville, where you're tasked with defending your house against the second worst thing to ever come out of a neighborhood: hordes and hordes of zombies. However, I would still take it over your average homeowners association. And because the zombies are such bastards, they decided to start porch swiping all of my Amazon packages. So I no longer get shipments of the essential supplies I need, and I am prepared to fight back, with nothing but a toothpick and 2-week-old leftovers. How many plants does it take to beat Plants vs. Zombies? Now, we start on World 1 where we have to use our first plant in the pea shooter, and after spamming them for a while, we get through the first level. Now, once we get to 1-2, the game really wants us to use sunflowers. But, like my mom telling me to take a shower, I ignore it until it goes away. And after another level of spamming pea shooters, we get through it very easily. Now heading into 1-3, we finally have access to a cherry bomb, which is about as useless as a league player buying a gym membership. So after again another level of spamming pea shooters, we get access to the shovel, which is actually kind of worthless because it's not like I can replace my plants with different plants. Now on 1-4, we actually have to defend a full 5-tile lawn, and because there's more room to defend, I can't get my defense up in time, but thankfully we have a couple of mowers to save us. And now on 1-5, we head on to Walnut Bowling. Now when I was originally doing this run, I thought about trying to do this only using one plant at a time, before I realized that that was stupid and it's easier to just not count these. Again, because I can't choose my plants. Now after embarrassingly trying to go for combos and constantly missing, we head to 1-6, where we get introduced to pole vaulting zombies, and these guys cause me quite a lot of trouble, because normally you would just put a low cost plant in front of them. But much like low tier god trying to write off his rent, I can't do that. But after we get past 1-6, I come up with a revolutionary strategy, similar to Jinxie discovering the Darth Maul. If I place my pea shooters like this, I no longer have to deal with pole vaulting zombies. So after losing a couple more morals because I spoke too soon, we head on to 1-8, where we get introduced to the Buckethead zombie. And the only thing we can do is praying. And we get lucky because there's only 2 of them in this entire level, so we just let them go to the mowers. Now we have the same problem on 1-9, but because this level is longer, we're able to get 3 layers of pea shooters, and that is more than enough to deal with any bucketheads that come our way. And finally, we make it to level 1-10. And the thing about this level is, we do have access to the pea shooter, but much like reaction content on YouTube, there's just not enough of it. So in order to beat this level, I have to sacrifice a little bit and use the repeater. Now does this count? No, because I can't choose my plants! Now after we get through the first world, we head on to the second, where we don't have any access to any sun, because at night it no longer falls through the sky. But because we have the push room, it makes this entire world an absolute joke. Because of its extremely fast recharge time, I can effectively spam it all over the map. The only problem with the puff shrooms is they only have a range of 3 tiles. But the thing is that it doesn't matter, because I can effectively ball on a budget. And even the new graves introduced are not an issue, despite the fact that I can't take them out. So we get through levels 2-1, 2-2, 2-3, and 2-4, despite the fact that I get overwhelmed by Buckethead zombies. And another fact about these levels is that Crazy Dave tries to get us to buy another seed slot, but much like Dale Emmanuel Wilson, I'm over $120,000 in debt and can't do it. And now we make it on to 2-5, which is just another easy minigame where we whack zombies. But because I can't use the sun to use the grave busters, it just becomes slightly more mildly difficult. Now on 2-6, we run into a bit of a problem where we get introduced to the football zombie, and this fat fucking chud takes up my entire lane just for me to kill him. And on 2-7, it somehow gets worse, because we get introduced to the screen door zombies, and these bastards are basically just bucketheads that shield all the zombies in front of them. And we also still have to deal with football zombies. And this was almost as bad as the time I became a mod on the Faithful Sheriff's Discord server. 2-8 introduces the disco zombie, which is not too difficult if you just counter him with some spam. And 2-9 has a lot of very annoying grave placements, but again, I'm so good at spamming, I get through it anyways. But now, onto the toughest level of this world, 2-10. Now, 2-10 is difficult because you essentially get no puff shrooms, and I originally thought I was going to have to use another 3 plants to beat this level, but after a good amount of testing, I was able to figure out that you can actually beat this with just the puff shroom and doom shroom.
By maximizing the current amount of zombies on your screen, you're able to get as much doom shroom value.
Stop! This is a nerd talking. Gamers get through it by just straight balling. Now, onto World 3 and the pool world, where we get another required plant in the lily pad, because the only way to defend the water lanes is using the lily pad and pea shooter. Now, because the puff shroom is a nocturnal plant, you may think he'd be useless, but they work very well as human shields. And they're sleeping, so we hope they don't feel any pain. And this works for 3-1. And after, we get the best plant in the entire game, the squash. And yes, it's the best plant in the entire game, and I will die on that hill. Second best, I would probably say is sunflower. I mean, no reason in particular though. But on 3-2, we end up running into some football zombies. And on the final wave, 4 conehead zombies spawn in my 1 water lane. But I'm able to stall them and kill them with just the mower. Now, on 3-3, we get introduced to snorkel zombies. And these guys are just bastards, because the only way to kill them is to use a lily pad and a puff shroom. And every time I try to end up killing him, they always just eat my lily pad. So every time I see them, I have to spend 25 sun just to kill one. And somehow 3-4 is worse, because not only do I have to deal with snorkel zombies, I also have to deal with pole vaulters and bucket heads. Now, the pole vaulters aren't as much of a problem because I have the puff shroom, but the bucket heads are absolutely a giant problem. So much so that I have to take my first reset of the entire run. And of course, right after this is when I'm finally able to solve my water lane problems by buying the pool cleaners. And after a quick and easy minigame, we're on to 3-6, where we have to use the squash, bringing up our plant count total to 4, because this level introduces zombonis. And these guys are little bastards, because not only do they have the same amount of health as a buckethead, if they get far enough, they spawn bobsled zombies, which are also just bastards. So in order to counter them, I have to use the squash. Now 3-7 is basically just 3-6, except it's longer and has more snorkel zombies. And this is not made easier by the horrendously slow game speed, and this causes me to constantly get distracted and makes me play almost as badly as when you're playing Nuketown with your little brother and he keeps screen cheating, so you low-key just throw him out of the window. Now on 3-8 we run into a little bit of a kerfuffle. These are dolphin zombies. They are super bastards. That's it. That's all I have to say. They just fucking suck. And I constantly have to burn sun when I'm trying to kill them. Now, 3-9 is surprisingly not that bad, despite the fact that you deal with dolphin zombies, zombonis, and bobsled zombies. And 3-10 is just another conveyor belt level, where we're forced to use additional plants in the 3-peater and the jalapeno. But other than that, I kept laughing at the stupid Family Guy 3-peater joke.
3-peater.
So now, for World 4, we're on to the nighttime pool levels. And they've added fog. And I want to say, this world fucking sucks. Mainly because the fog takes away half the screen and nothing happens. And the game speed is now super fucking slow. But we get the sea shroom. And although it's required, it's still goated. Now, the first 2 levels of World 4 are nothing terribly bad. Just a couple of football zombies and the most fucking boring gameplay you've ever seen in your entire life. But once we get to 4-3, we run into a balloon zombie. And these fucks are unbelievably annoying. Because much like a fly that lands on your ball sack, you can't do anything about it. Now, I'm lucky because on 4-3, there's only one that spawns. But it gets much worse. Now, 4-4 reintroduces dolphin zombies, and this is made much worse, because I don't know what lane they're going to spawn in, but luckily for me, I love to gamble. And you may ask, well, what on earth are you gambling with? And I would say the drywall right next to my computer. Now, 5-5 is just the vase breaker minigame, but because I'm a dumbass, I accidentally ended up using a hypno shroom on the final wave, which I completely didn't have to. World's biggest dumbass over here. Moving on from that, 4-6 and 4-7 are both very easy levels that can be completed with little to no headache. All they do is just introduce digging zombies, and these are not a problem at all for the puff shrooms. Now 4-8 and 4-9 bring back balloon zombies, and now we're back to the RNG based bullshit. And all you can do for this level is just hope and pray that it works. And every attempt takes a whopping 10 minutes, and I'm kind of losing my mind. Maybe. Kind of though, I'm not sure. All I know is I'd rather have a rhinoceros stamp on my balls than do this shit one more time. Because I swear to God, if I do one more fucking challenge with this stupid ass level, I'm gonna take you out on a nice romantic date. And we're gonna go get tea. And then we're gonna 4-10 is just another stupid fucking conveyor belt level. I don't give a shit anymore. Just now on to World-5 and the roof levels, where you would normally have to use the flower pot in order to use your plants. But the game gives you enough at the start to where it's not that big of an issue. Now, we do have to use another required plant in the cabbage pult, but it's not that big of a deal. Now, we start the roof levels, and 5-1 is not bad, other than the fact that I have no lawnmowers. But after 5-1, I'm able to buy roof cleaners. And this is why I did not buy the 6 seed slot, so I could be #stuntin' on Crazy Dave. Now 5-2, 5-3, and 5-4 are all very easy levels. The only thing I had problems with was Bungie zombies constantly taking away my flower pots. And for some reason, the devs put a funny reference to my hairline in the game, because after every level, the amount of flower pots would just keep receding. Now 5-5 is just another easy minigame before we get on to 5-6 and we meet the catapult zombies. And these guys are just fucking annoying, because for some reason, they have more health than a conehead zombie, and they'll constantly attack your catapults in the back. But after 2 levels of dealing with them, I now have to deal with gargantuars, which is the entire reason why I have to include the flower pot as a plant, because the cooldowns on the squash are just slightly too long for me to get away without using the flower pot. So after another 2 levels, we finally get to Dr. Zomboss himself. After an embarrassingly close call, we beat the game with only 7 plants used, and now it's time to see if I can shave that down. Now, our current count sits at 7 plants total. Those being the pea shooter, puff shroom, lily pad, squash, sea shroom, flower pot, and cabbage pole. So, how do we get that down? Well, 2 plants that we can't get rid of are the lily pad and flower pot, simply because they're required for the environments that we use them in, which leaves us with 5 shaveable plants. Now, my original thought in order to do this was to use the gloom shroom, because it can hit multiple lanes, but you need to use a fume shroom, glue shroom, and coffee bean, plus you have to use insta-kills in order to get rid of things like zombies and gargantuars, and you also have to use garlic for all the lanes the gloom shroom can't cover. But the best thing I was able to come up with in order to shave down plants was, instead of using the cabbage pult, puff shroom, pea shooter, and sea shroom, I would just use the sunflower and melon pult. And now it's time for testing. Now I get to play through this whole game again! Yay! Okay, since we're gonna go through this again, we're gonna do this really quickly, okay? 1-1, easy. 1-2, easy. 1-3, fuck it, you get the point. World 1, absolutely free. Did not struggle at all. Now, on World 2, because of the garbage sun generation, I had to end up using the puff shroom, but it's no big deal, outside of a couple of crappy grave placements that disrupted my lovely plant symmetry, which might not bother you, okay? Okay, but it really bothers me! Also in World 2, we stopped using the squash, because I just didn't need it. Now, World 3 was really easy, just super boring. I mean, just look at this. Now, World 4 is where things get interesting, because it's when I finally noticed that 1, the levels have extra flags, and 2, there's a lot more specialized zombies than there's supposed to be. For example, on World 4-3, they spawn multiple balloon zombies, and I know that level in a normal playthrough only has 1 balloon zombie. So after a quick search on Google, I figured out that if you replay the game a second time, it essentially acts as a new game plus. And there's more specialized zombie spawns, so more pole vaulters, more zombonis, more balloon zombies, and yes, more gargantuars. Now, I was kind of worried that I wasn't able to finish testing the sunflower and melon pult strategy, because 4-9 is just straight up impossible, because on a normal playthrough, it spawns 6 balloon zombies. So it would be straight up impossible on a new game plus. Basically, if you use the blowover plant, it pretty much only affects the balloon zombies. Now, is it kind of cheating? You see, you're able to get through these levels without using the blowover at all, and this adds more balloon zombies than there usually would be, so I'd say it's okay. So after multiple levels of getting annoyed by the fog and spending all my sun on blowovers whenever there was balloon zombies, I'm finally able to make it to World 5, and I can finally use the catapults for their intended purpose. Now, the first couple levels of World 5 are not really a big issue, because I can just move up my catapults a little bit so they don't get targeted by the catapult zombies. However, once we make it to 5-8, we start to run into gargantuars, and they are kind of a problem. However, we can take them out with just 4 melon pults. And on this level, I did get kind of lucky, because all 3 of them, yes, all 3 gargantuars spawned in 1 lane. Now, 5-9 is a little different, because in order to beat this level, you need to get set up properly, and in order to get set up properly, you need to get kind of lucky. Now, you have to make sure that the second zombie that spawns in goes through the first lane and takes out the mowers in the first lane, because gargantuars can't spawn on the first lane. Then you're on your own, because you gotta figure out how to deal with 5 gargantuars, because the game fucking hates you. Now, I came really close to fucking this up, but I didn't. I instead just locked in, and I was able to beat this level. Now, after another Zomboss fight, our current plant count sits at 6 plants. However, I've actually been lying to you. It's actually 5. Because from 2.8 onwards, I did not use the squash. And I've already proven that you do not need the squash in order to beat World 2. You can just use the puff shroom. And World 1 is an absolute cakewalk. You do not need the squash to beat it. Now, it lowers our plant count down to a nice clean 5. Those being the sunflower, melon pulp, puff shroom, lily pad, and flower pot. Now, from here, I don't really know how to get it much lower than 5. I mean, if y'all have any suggestions, be sure to comment them down below. That's going to do it for this video, and I will see you next time where I play more fun games.